Easy, baby. Won't you love me night and day?
Hello and welcome to the practice problems video on the section on inverse functions. Alrighty, here's problem number 1. So we have, these are kind of like this is a two-part question. So if f inverse of negative 4 is equal to negative 8, find f of negative 8. So here, this is going to be pretty simple. I mean, you just identify what's your input and what's your output, right? So this is like the input b and output negative 8, okay? Or a. And then when we plug it into the original function, when we plug in the output of our inverse, then we just get back the original input of our inverse. Okay, so again, the variables or the values just swap, the inputs and the outputs for our function and our inverse function. So here, this one's a little bit tricky. We have to be careful with the notation, okay? So this one says if f of 5 is equal to 2, find f of 5 to the negative 1 power. Okay, so if you notice the phrasing, I said to the negative 1 power. I didn't mention the word inverse, right? Because we see that we don't have something that looks like this. This indicates inverse. But this negative 1 up here, that is a power because it's not attached directly to our f, okay? So what this means is that what we're going to do for this problem, for the second part, is we're just going to take f of 5, whatever that is, which happens to be equal to 2. We're going to plug in a 2 right there, so this is equal to, in parentheses, a 2 to the negative 1 power. And as we all know, negative 1 power means you flip whatever you have. So like numerator becomes denominator, denominator becomes numerator, blah, blah, blah. So we're just going to take the reciprocal, and we get an answer of 1 over 2. Okay, so that second part was kind of like a trick question, okay? It's just important to know the notation and what it's supposed to be for inverses. So that would be the proper notation for an inverse. Okay, here's number 2. We're going to use the graph of f of x shown, and we're going to fill out these 4 parts. So part A says find f of 0. So all that means is when your input is 0 into our function f of x. So when x is equal to 0, what's the value of our function? And that would be at 3. Okay, so f of 0 is equal to 3. That's pretty simple. And now let's do part B. So solve f of x is equal to 0. So this means at what x value is our function 0? Okay, so when is the height 0? So that would be when x is equal to 2. So our answer is going to be x equals 2. Okay, now part C says f inverse of 0. Okay, so that's a little bit different. This means, okay, we're going to swap some things here. So this basically means when does our function, when is the output equal to 0? Okay, so when is output of f, of our original function f, equal to 0? So the answer to that would be 2, right? When x equals 2, then the output is 0. So f inverse of 0 is going to be equal to a 2. Okay, so now let's do the same thing for this one. And this one basically means, okay, so if we write the relation, let's just write this, okay? This is the relationship between f and its inverse, okay? So whatever the output of f is, that's what the input of our inverse one is. Whatever the input of our normal f is, that's going to be the output, okay? So basically what this is saying is, well, f inverse of some b is equal to 0. So that would be the same as saying f of 0 is equal to some b, and we already found that that b happens to be a 3, okay? So that means that a 3 must be our b, okay? So that means x is equal to 3 in this case. Alrighty?
Oh, come on and love